Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. So the past couple of weeks ago, I did make a predictions tier list as to what the Season 3 meta would be, and this is what you see on screen right now. So what has changed in terms of the overall tiers and what my thoughts are moving forward? That being said, if you want to see more Overwatch 2 content, shooters content, and more, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave your comments down below. And let's jump straight into the new tier list that I've now created. Of course, if you want to see me on twitch.tv/newfrontier_, be sure to click that link in the description and follow for more Overwatch 2. Now, this is the new tier list. So what has changed? Well, let's look back at the original one. So we can see that originally I had predicted that Orisa and Ramattra, Kiriko and Sojourn would remain in the very strong category. And then you have your upper class, which consisted of D.Va and all your other respective tanks. Everything else down below, they're even. And as you know, even just means that they're either 50-50. You know, they're going to do really good on a team or they're not going to do good. It's really hit or miss. And then the needs good team section were just characters that I felt really needed a lot of team coordination to really do well. And then niche picks, of course, you had the Ball, Sombra, and now Reinhardt. So what has really changed? Well, let's jump to it. So now this is the new tier list that I've come up with. And surprisingly, there are no more niche picks. I don't think in Season 3 there are any niche pick characters. I do think that every character now has some viability, but some more so than others. So let's get to that. So we'll start with the very strong category. We now see that Mercy has joined the very strong category as her buffs or nerfs, as you want. I guess you can debate on whichever one is the correct one. She has now become more of a tankier healer. She's now able to sustain herself much longer on field and thus help her team to survive for longer periods of time, thus, you know, creating a longer span of time for the enemy to take you out. And that can be quite challenging, especially with Mercy being, again, now more tankier. And then everyone else remains the same. I think Orisa is still very strong in the right hands, and same with Ramattra. I think people really underestimate Ramattra. I think in the right hands, Ramattra is still very, very good, so long as you're able to understand how he works. And because of his skill expression, I think that a lot of players don't necessarily know how to optimize him very well, especially at lower elos. But at higher elos, I think that Ramattra still gets value. In spite of his nerfs, he's still a very, very good character. So upper class. Upper class, now you can see that Wrecking Ball has joined the fray alongside Cassidy. Cassidy has also, I feel, shown a lot of improvement with the additional buff to his primary fire distance. That, I think, really helps him in terms of just being able to play a more mid-range game, being able to help the front line better. This gives, you know, Cassidy a lot more value. And so I think that really gives him the much-deserved increase, or rank up, you should say, in this category. Wrecking Ball, of course, with his buffs, it makes him so much more viable as a character on the field. It makes him more sustainable. It gives him, you know, just a lot more on-field value, especially with his mine and pile jabber combination being much more concise, more refined, thus giving him more pressure to apply on enemies. So I think he's well deserved here in an upper class, and everyone else kind of remains the same. I think that Ashe right now is still doing quite well in the low and upper elos. I think even Echo is still doing pretty well in the right hand. Sigma will always be consistent, and he actually moved a little bit up from before. You can see that he was a little bit lower in the upper class tier. Now I've moved him higher. Winston, I still think he's got great value. I don't think he's even by any means. I think that now that we're moving into a much more faster paced meta, I feel like Winston is certainly up there with regards to how he applies pressure and how he can survive, especially now when you have the likes of Mercy being very strong. Junker Queen, I think, is also still very strong. She still remains upper class. She's a very viable unit. Now with the likes of Roadhog being nerfed, Junker Queen now has more, you know, opportunities to really utilize her kit in a more pressure, more rushdown oriented meta. And so for you Junker Queen mains out there, now's your time to bring her out and shine. And my homie right here, Junkrat, I put so much time into this guy, and I still feel like he's very strong. He's still really, really good as a character. I don't think he's going to be dropping anytime soon. His kit is pretty concise, pretty consistent. He gets great damage. You know, he's got great survivability in terms of how he utilizes his concussion mines, how he can trap enemies, and just play a very strong keep away game and zoning game, which is really, that's all he's about. So Junkrat will always remain where he is, in my opinion. Doomfist, I feel like Doomfist is honestly kind of slept on, but I do feel that if you are able to master him, he is very much remaining in upper class. I don't think he's going to be very strong, like, you know, upper echelon type of vibe anytime soon, but I do feel like he is going to have a lot more control, a lot more play, especially when you have the likes of D.Va and Winston just being more predominantly utilized in this more aggressive meta. Soldier 76, I love this guy a lot, but I actually might put him down a little bit lower this time, just because while his recoil buff is great for those in the lower elos, or just those who not, you know, who can't really control his recoil, I think the one thing that makes Soldier 76 just a little bit lacking is his damage output. I've spent a lot of time with this guy, and I can honestly say that there are so many instances where I feel like I should be getting kills, and I'm just not getting them. You know, I'm just not securing the kills that I know I need. Comparing that to, let's say, a Junkrat, where I can hit you with 2 frags and a concussion mine or trap you, and you're dead. Whereas with Soldier, I feel like I still have to put so much extra effort into killing one target, and then his visor just doesn't really have the same oomph as it used to. Now, granted, if you are being pocketed by Mercy, then there is, of course, great value there, but that's only if Mercy is pocketing you for most of the game. Otherwise, I think Soldier is still upper class. He's still a fantastic character. In the right hands, he's definitely a threat, but I do feel like he deserves a little bit of an extra boost in his damage, maybe just +1 damage on his overall primary fire, and he'll honestly be really, really good. But for now, he's still there in upper class. He's not a bad character by any means. He's a fantastic character, all-around character, but just right now, I've kind of lowered him down in the upper class. Tracer, Widowmaker, Ana, all these 3 characters are fantastic in their own right. Tracer being one of the hardest characters in the game to master, but when you do master her, she is fantastic at just playing a strong assassin game, flanking, taking care of, you know, threats with ease. Same thing with Widowmaker. She's just a threat on the field, and if you are really good with her, she can easily erase teams without much concern. Ana is still very strong, or at least in the upper class category, just simply because she's such a great support. She has great self-sustain in terms of her own biotic grenades, and her nano is just great for boosting characters, let's say, like Soldier, or even the likes of Ramatra. Anybody who needs a boost, nano is there to get you covered. So Ana will always remain upper class for me. She's a great, great support unit, and if you're able to utilize her, she can take you very far. D.Va remains the same, in the same upper class category. Actually, I did keep her, I had her higher before, but I dropped her a little bit lower this time. Not because she's bad, but I do think because we have more like Wrecking Ball, and we have other units that tend to just output a lot more pressure than she does. Granted, she does a lot of pressure. I've used her a lot in this season so far, but I feel like Wrecking Ball is just, you know, he's all over the place. And Winston's all over the place, and if Doomfist is there, it's definitely a hassle at times. And one of the caveats, I guess, with D.Va is that she's such a big hitbox that it makes it easier for enemies to just hard focus you, and then, you know, before you know it, you're out of your mech, and then you're dead. But again, let's not crush the spirits of the D.Va players out there. I do feel like she's still a very strong candidate, and this is why she still remains in upper class. But when you have the likes of Sigma, and you have the likes of, you know, Wrecking Ball out there doing work, I think D.Va is still really worthwhile to play. She's definitely a very versatile unit, and she gets the job done when she has to. But there are times where I do feel she gets overwhelmed, and so as a result, I've just put her down slightly. She's still great, so don't sleep on this character. She's still very, very good. Now, Zarya, I've kept her where she is. At first, I had her in even, but I think she remains upper class just because you have Orisa up there. Orisa is still a character that you can melt away very, very easily with Zarya. And surprisingly enough, in spite of her lack of mobility, Zarya does a lot of damage. And if you can really play her well, play around her shields, you know, play around your team, Zarya can easily melt a lot of these tanks that are being seen, you know, in the ranked format right now. So don't sleep on Zarya as well. Even Zarya versus D.Va is pretty good because Zarya can just ignore defense matrix and just eat everything. You know, just zap her, and then before you know it, she's dead. So Zarya versus D.Va, I think, is a pretty good matchup. It's pretty even, I'd say. But yeah, don't sleep on Zarya. If you like her, definitely use her. She's worth it. And now we have Cassidy. So earlier I mentioned that Cassidy received his buffs, and I feel like Cassidy is a fantastic character now just because of that additional buff to his primary fire, giving him extra range. And that additional range makes it so that he can play more, you know, more in the front line, and also just protect his teammates better by being able to just shoot a lot farther. Like, it seems like a very small, minuscule change, but it really is a big change for Cassidy. And I think that helps him in terms of his overall kit. Sure, his High Noon still isn't necessarily the greatest ult in the game, but everything else about Cassidy is still very, very strong. And so therefore I put him now in the upper class format, especially if you have Mercy pocketing you, or you just have a team that consists of, you know, a great tank, but also great supports, then Cassidy will always remain there in upper class. And we've already spoken about Soldier, so we'll move on. So all the even characters, as I said, the greatest surprises here is Sombra, Reinhardt, and Zenyatta. Now, I've put Sombra here because I do think everyone's kind of screaming like, oh, she's still a bad character in spite of her buffs. I disagree. I still think that Sombra is actually quite viable in this format because you have the likes of Wrecking Ball running around, and surprisingly enough, you can hack a lot of ults. Like, there have been so many times where I've actually hacked people out of their ults. Like, I've hacked a Kiriko ult and it canceled it completely. You know, I've hacked a Ramattra ult before it even started. So hacking with Sombra is really, really good. I think the main problem is that most players who use Sombra don't know how to use her, and so they quickly assume that she's not that great. You know, Sombra is a character that requires a lot of coordination. She requires a lot of, you know, very, very quick decision making. She's a very, very decision making based character. In fact, I'd put her up in the category of like difficult characters to utilize and master, because it's not just about going invisible and then hacking this character and then coming back and teleporting. No, there really needs to be a lot of coordinated attacks with you and your team. You need to be able to consistently let your teammates know who you're hacking, why you're hacking them, and there's a lot of things you have to be asking yourself. It's not just, oh, I'm going to hack the support and then move on. It's a lot of different things you have to consider. You know, do you want to hack the tank to cancel their ult? Do you want to hack the support to cancel their ult? Or do you want to hack the DPS to prevent them from flanking? There's so many different variables to consider with Sombra. And so for that, I put her in even, because in the right hands, a Sombra specialist can really melt a lot of enemies in the backline, especially with the little boost to her damage. Like, when you hack somebody, they're taking more damage. So the more you think about that, then you realize that she actually has a lot of viability. And so if you're able to hack consistently, hack correctly and not just carelessly, she still has really good value. And as a result, I put her in even. It's really hit or miss. You're either really good with her or you're not. That's really what it is. Reinhardt, he's even. I think his buffs do make him a more suitable tank in this format, though when you have the likes of Wrecking Ball and, again, you know, all these other push, you know, aggressive oriented tanks, Reinhardt still struggles in some regards, or I'd say in most regards. So while he does have, you know, a stronger fire strike and his charge is a lot better, he still happens to find himself in a tough spot. You know, he gets value on the maps that he's really good at, like King's Row, for example, but other areas he still feels a little bit sluggish, and as a result, I've kept them an even because, again, in the right hands, a Reinhardt can be a nightmare to fight against, but if you're not that great with him, then again, he kind of falls to the wayside. At lower elos, he's fantastic because he's a great, easy to pick up character. You can just, easy swipe enemies left and right. You don't have to worry about anything. So he'll remain even for now. Hopefully, as the meta progresses, and we'll see how things go as far as Season 3 and moving into Season 4, who knows? We might revert back to a more slower paced meta, and as a result, Reinhardt may see some more play. But with the stages like Numbani and Havana, you've got these maps that are really all about playing higher ground. You've got a lot of high ground in that game, in those maps, and Reinhardt wants to be grounded. He wants to be on the ground doing more of his damage. So as a result, he kind of struggles there. Zenyatta I put even as well. I do think Zenyatta actually is quite viable. And when you pair him with the right team composition, he can be extremely potent, especially with his Discord orb. That can really be a complete disaster for players who are up against Discord. So if you, let's say, if you Discord Wrecking Ball or Discord, let's say a Doomfist or even a Sigma or a Ramatra, you can melt these tanks quite quickly. So Zenyatta is a very, very viable pick. Though, again, you really need to understand that Zenyatta is a glass cannon, much like a Tracer, and that they're risk-oriented characters, and they're high risk, high reward, right? If you can get all of your shots off and just pelt people left and right with your orbs, you're getting value. But if you're not that good with Zenyatta, and you're not really, sustaining yourself or healing your team as much, then you're not going to get value out of him. So again, it's really hit or miss, and this is why I've kept him an even. And then lastly, needs good team. So we have Symmetra, Hanzo, Mei, and Brigitte. Now, Brigitte is up for debate. I kind of want to put her in even, to be honest with you, because I do think that she's actually somewhat better now. So I might put her up in even slot, because Brigitte as a character, her buffs do allow her to play a more sustained game. She's able to pressure better. She's able to, play her role a lot more efficiently. And so, again, in the right hands, Brigitte can really be of great support to the likes of, let's say, Junker Queens, or even the likes of like a Sigma or even Reinhardt playing together. Like she still got value. She still gets good value. So I think I'll put her in even for now. But the rest of them, Symmetra, she really needs a good team, because in order for Symmetra to get good value, she wants to be doing coordinated assaults too, especially on maps like Lijiang Tower, where you can, plant your turrets and get really good value. However, I think in this particular format where we have a lot of maps that are, really kind of situated in more higher ground, or the maps are more spread out, Symmetra wants maps that are really small, because that's where she gets a lot of value out of her turrets. And so Lijiang Tower is still in the format, which is great for her. But other maps like, let's say, Havana, or let's say Numbani, these maps are really they're really spread out, and you really have to know where to place your turrets to get the most value. And other than that, she needs to be up close and personal with the enemy to get insane value out of her actual primary fire. But if we're in a format where you've got the likes of Diva, and you've got, let's say, Sigma, and even Reinhardt, like, sure, you're going to get value from, melting their shields and boosting your damage. But then you also have Winston, you have Wrecking Ball, you got all these characters that are very rush oriented, and Symmetra can easily just get rushed down and dealt with very easily before she even gets the ball rolling. So for that, she needs a good team. Hanzo too, as well as Mei, they remain the same. I think both of these characters require a lot of coordination, a lot of communication for them to get more value, especially Mei. Mei just really wants a team that can follow up on her decision making. Like, okay, I'm going to use my wall here, I'm blocking off the enemy tank, focus the tank. Like, if you can't communicate that to your team effectively, your walls are useless, right? Comparing that to Sombra, at least Sombra can still get value on her own, because she's basically a solo flanker. She can flank and hack anyone she wants, and so long as she's letting the teammates know who she's hacking, she still gets value regardless. But if you make a mistake with Mei, it's even more vital, because your wall can block off potential, picks. Your walls can block off potential, you know, opportunities. There's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration with Mei, and so for that, she requires a good team. So that being said, this is the new Season 3 tier list that I've come up with from the previous one. So what do you folks think? What are your thoughts on the tier list? Do you agree, disagree? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see you folks on the next video. Take care, and peace out.